All is quiet so far this morning in Great Britain, the morning after the UK raised its terror threat level to severe. That means government officials consider an attack highly likely, but they've stressed that they don't have intelligence suggesting an attack is imminent. British Prime Minister David Cameron warned that Britain faces the, quote, greatest and deepest terror threat in the country's history because of developments in Iraq and Syria. In other words, ISIS. NBC News' Kelly Kobeea joins us live from London with more details. Kelly, good morning or good afternoon where you are.
Hi there, Jonathan. Yeah, as you mentioned, there is no evidence, according to security officials, of any specific or imminent attack here. But with 500 British citizens traveling to Syria and Iraq to join ISIS and some 200 now back, the threat, they say, is very real.
Britons awoke to a new fear this morning, splashed every headline. Terror alert red, the highest since 2011. A terrorist attack, the government warned, is now highly likely.
What we're facing in Iraq now with ISIL is a greater and deeper threat to our security than we have known before.
The terror group ISIS has the world's attention, and they're using it, posting yet another violent, disturbing video, this time of captured Kurdish soldiers. Among the ISIS fighters are hundreds of British citizens.
This is the golden era of jihad.
They've given tips on how to join the fight, and they've become executioner.
This is James Wright Foley.
James Foley's killer spoke with a British accent.
But it is becoming clear that there are some gaps in our armory, and we need to strengthen them.
Britain hasn't been hit by a large-scale terrorist attack since 2005, when 4 British Islamists bombed the London Underground and a bus, killing 52. But last year, a British soldier, Lee Rigby, was slaughtered on a London street in broad daylight by 2 Islamic extremists. And in Brussels, an ISIS recruit killed 4 people outside a Jewish center.
The Islamic State is now beginning to posture and directly threaten the West and Western interests. They have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of fighters with passports that give them easy access.
Passports that allow them to travel to Europe, Britain, and beyond, to the U.S., where the threat level remains the same.
I don't anticipate at this point that there's a plan to change that level.
The Department of Homeland Security said in a statement that officials are deeply concerned about the threat posed by ISIS, but they know of no specific credible threat to the U.S. Jonathan?
Kelly, is anything being done to stop the travel of jihadis back to Britain or the United States?
Well, the Department of Homeland Security said in a statement yesterday that they've already tightened controls at airports with direct flights into the U.S. Around the world, obviously, and they're also working with foreign countries to track these foreign fighters. But in terms of actual passports and the freedom to travel, Britain is still working on that. In fact, politicians are meeting this weekend trying to hash out some sort of new laws or proposals which would strip those passports from foreign fighters and essentially keep them here in the UK. But again, these are just proposals, ideas, nothing in law yet. Jonathan?
My thanks to Kelly Kobeea in London. Thank you for joining me this morning. Margaret, I'm going to start with you. As Kelly just reported, we've received no indications from the U.S. that there's an increased terror threat here. Should we be more concerned than we are, do you think?
Well, I took the train and didn't fly here, so my terror alert is red. You know, there's just so much going on that seems out of our control, and it doesn't feel like the U.S. knows just who the American jihadists are. So, you know, did you get a sense that we have control over who of our citizens have passports that have gone to fight? I don't think we know until they die, then we know. Yeah. So, so much now seems out of our control with a terrorist group that is so well funded and so effective and has recruited Americans that could sneak back in so much more easily.
And that it seems like we're just sort of learning about them. You know, the president to come out the other day and say, well, we're working on a strategy when ISIS has been developing for months and they've taken control. I mean, it seems like we don't even know what they're doing necessarily. We're starting to figure out and authorizing surveillance, but it doesn't seem like there
should be like an Uber watch list for these people.
Well, I think that was a misspeak. We don't have a strategy. I mean, obviously, we're dropping bombs on them, and it's working to some extent in Iraq. Now, ISIS is vicious. ISIS is potent. He said that we're at the most dangerous place since 9/11. We've heard Cameron say a version of that. The difference between that and Al-Qaeda, so you say, wait, since 9/11, they killed thousands of us on that day, is that, talking to experts, ISIS wants to win in the theater that they're in now. They're an army. They are full of people who are army regulars who use vicious tactics, more vicious than Al-Qaeda. They haven't been planning an attack. From what we know, they haven't been planning an attack on the American homeland. That's something that Al-Qaeda was doing. So even though they're the richest terrorist group that the world has probably ever seen, that doesn't mean that their target is the United States in America right now.
But what about those Americans? But I come back to the question of the American jihadists who are leaving here, going there. I mean, is it hysterical in the negative sense to be concerned that they will then come back and wage war on the American homeland?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I don't think those two things can be completely distinguished because one, victory in the theater that they're in is related to what the United States does, what Western Europe does in response. And so I think that this is something that we should be very concerned about. I also think that we should not lose sight of the fact that they don't necessarily have to send people back here. We've seen in the last few years radicalization via the internet that will have kind of people who are here already. So perhaps this is something we can look at. They're 70 to 100 and saying that maybe 30 some odd people that they're not identified yet. That's one thing. I'm actually more concerned about people who may already be here.
And of course, I think ISIS would love a hit in the United States. That's the greatest victory of all.
For propaganda purposes, at the least.
Well, on that uplifting note, my thanks to Kate Nocera of BuzzFeed and Mike Pesca of Slate for